talking about military establishments here, so... okay. That's Bawdsey Manor, down in Suffolk. I'm sure most of you at some time or other have come across the link with Bawdsey and the radio history during the war and that sort of thing. Okay. I'm not going to talk much about that today. Just a brief history at the start for those who perhaps haven't come across that. A little bit of location and the history of the place, some background to what we're doing, proposal that we're trying to put forward, and basically where have we got to, where are we going. So in the next 40 minutes or so, if you have any questions, shout them out, we'll take them as they go. First of all, the building itself. Yes, it is a Folly. It was built in a very old style, but it was actually built in the 19th century. It was the seat of the Quilter family. The first baronet Quilter built it. The fourth baronet still survives, is still around, although the family no longer live there. It was requisitioned by the MOD in World War I and was used by, I think, the Devonshire Regiment. And it was given back to the family after World War I. But they liked it so much they bought it in 1936. They obviously enjoyed being there, and it became the development centre. It became a research centre rather than an operational station. And in fact, on that original slide, if I just quickly go back to the white tower there, they look quite dissimilar, but they're actually built around the same time. It was not because this was a much later addition. But in that white tower, on the second floor up there, is where Watson and his team actually did the development work. In 1937, I think it was, there was the Daventry experiment, which I believe Barry will allude to later on. Following that, the MOD saw some potential in radar, so Bawdsey became the development site for it. And Watson and Arnold Wilkins were tasked with particularly developing airborne radar. They didn't invent radar because all the bits existed. And in fact, ground-based radar was possible. But what they couldn't do at the time was fly about 2 tons of equipment the size of a medium-sized garden shed. So their task was to get this down into something that could be flown in a plane. Now the location. We're on your way there, it's on the coast, it overlooks the North Sea. If you want sort of more well-known landmarks, then Harwich and Felixstowe, it's 2 or 3 miles north of there, right on the edge of the Deben estuary. And it remained an RAF station until the 1980s, when it was closed down and it was bought by the present, eventually bought after a lot of wrangling by the present owners. For reference, the block we work with, or we're trying to work with, is JO01QX88EA, if you want a 10-character reference for it. But this is the site. Out here is the North Sea, and up here is the River Deben estuary, obviously taken at a reasonably high tide there. There's the manor house itself, and here behind it was the stable block, the carriage house. Behind that, not really in sight, they're about where the pointer is at the moment, is the wartime receiver block. And over here, you might just be able to see the base of one of the original transmitter towers. And by that base is also the transmitter block. This photograph must have been taken in the early 90s at the latest, because that tower came down in the early 90s. It was the last of 4. Well, yes, it came down to the fact that it was impossible to keep it in good repair, yes. But it did come down under control. From Watson & Watt's work came a system that could be flown in a plane, and because of that, a network of transmitter and receiver stations were established around the coast in order to support that basis. And Bawdsey was one of the stations that had both transmit and receive capabilities for the chain home and chain home low systems. And that's what the site looked like from across the river at Felixstowe Ferry in its operational days. At the back there are 4 350-foot steel towers, and they had dipoles suspended between them. They were suspended on a set of ropes which meant you had different lengths of dipoles, so it could cover a good frequency range, and they were fed up the centre. And then we had 3 receiver towers in a line and one off at a right angle. I haven't actually seen any photographs or diagrams of what the receiver array was and whether that right angle was significant or only happened because the river was here. I don't know. None of those towers...
Just a minute. The other models, which the 4 receiver towers, were in a square.
Right, okay.
At the corners of a square.
Right, okay.
And they had a triadic hawser across the top, and the curtains were hung vertically.
Yes, these also had vertical curtains on them.
Yeah.
So they must have had perhaps one facing south, which would be this way, and 2 facing east. I don't know. But yeah, thanks, Ted. They were wooden towers. Some of the base pads still exist for these. There's at least 2 transmitter towers and 2 receiver towers for which the concrete base pads still exist around the site. And this is a picture inside the operations room in the receiver block. Now those of us who've been inside the receiver block have stood there with this picture in various parts of the operations room trying to work out where the hell the photographer was standing. We haven't made it yet. We can't line it up, but that's that is the standard photograph of the inside of the receiver block. Okay, so now, come up to date. The premises is used as an international school. I work there part-time as a maths and science teacher, which is really how we got into this. The towers are all gone. The last one was demolished in the 90s due to on safety grounds. Going back many years, Sam and I have had this wish to put a beacon down on that site. We wanted to use that final tower to house a 9-centimetre beacon, because that was one of the sort of frequencies they were working with at the time. And we'd have liked to have given it something like GB3RWW to commemorate the work, but it never happened and the tower came down. The transmitter block, however, is now a public museum to the work that took place there. So if you're ever down in East Anglia,
Martlesham.
Well, if you come down from Martlesham, we've actually got a trip organised to the site there. So if you're coming to Martlesham, you'll have the opportunity to go and look at the transmitter museum. They're opening up specially for it. The receiver block, however, is within the curtilage of the school itself, not on the more public part of the estate, and it is probably the best way to describe it is neglected. It needs some tender love and care. See Alan chuckling away, he's been crawling over it with me. It's not derelict, which was the word I had in there when I wrote this initially, because the school actually do use it for storage. They put all the spare beds in there, the wooden beds, because they'll get nice and damp and the joints will tighten up, and then put them back into service again. The receiver block itself, is off Google, taken from the air, is a 66-foot by 30-foot building, a blast wall around the outside, piled up with earth, 2 entrances, north and east. Flat roof, 8 foot thick. It was built to withstand the best munitions that could be thrown at it, or that they thought could be thrown at it at the time. We're okay there. Well, the transmitter block does leak water through from the roof, and it's the same construction. Yes, it's got water coming through from the roof. Well, it's a moron. This is the north end gate. That's now been refurbished and is actually lockable, but you can see the sort of state of the concrete, the blast wall and everything. There's the building itself, and there's roof inside all of that. We're not seeing any accommodation inside there. But that was taken quite recently. Okay, the plan. Well, Sam and I went and looked at the Transmitter Museum about Easter time, and I said, come and have a look at the receiver block on the site. And so we went, I took him on and we had a look, and while we were there, we actually were discussing this, and we saw actually the headmaster of the school and said, are there any problems if we sort of want to put some radio equipment in there? And he said, no problem at all, nobody uses it. So that's where the idea was sort of born, and we started kicking around ideas initially, that exactly the same as you said about Emily Moore, the beacons at Martlesham are way up in the air. This is down sort of pretty well at sea level. So we initially thought, well, 10 gigs or 24 gigs, perhaps it would be useful to have a low-level beacon, so that people on the other side of the North Sea could be reasonably confident that if they can hear a low-level beacon, anybody on this side would likely hear their signals. At the moment, if I hear the 24 gigs or the 10 gigs from Martlesham at 130 metres above sea level, there's no guarantee that it's worth putting a signal back across this way, because you can't guarantee people will hear or listen to it. That's where we started. We were sort of kicking this around, possibilities, the problems, the issues, and we turned it around the other way at the end. We're actually on our way down to Chelmsford to pick up these aerial pallet that BT had donated for us, and we sort of, in the process of that journey, we turned the whole thing around. I said, why not, actually, as this is a receiver block, go with putting receivers there? Because A, not aware of anybody actually doing it as a long-term facility at the moment, and also you get around all problems of licences and DOE Ofcom stuff and turning off and all that sort of stuff. So we thought, yeah, look for some co-sited long-term monitoring of beacons. Try and make the data available over the internet, so there's no need for people to visit the building. It's not a public museum, there's no public access, so we don't have to have any problems with the school site for the fact that we're getting people coming, the public coming onto the site, etc. And that's really where the thing started off from. And what we're looking at, and this is a longer term view, this is not what we're going to be doing initially, but this is a longer term view, where the intention is to make data available via the internet in either spectrogram and waterfall style and CSV data files. On the site we plan to have, for a number of bands, a band front end, antenna, down converters, whatever's required, into some form of software defined receiver. Now, I was able to grab a nice picture of SDRIQ off the internet there. That doesn't mean that we'll necessarily be using a stack of SDRIQs, but it will be some form of software-defined receiver out of which we can get the data stream that allows us to process the information to go off-site to the web server. Combined with that, we'll have weather monitoring facilities on site, so we'll capture weather data, so that the idea is that whilst you can use these for real-time observation, you can look at what beacons it's seeing, or if we can get the bandwidth up wide enough, you can look in the narrowband segment and look at your signal as it gets to the site there. The data from here and the data from these is also captured in the CSV files, so that you can take band propagation comparisons. If you know there was a particular propagation event that looks interesting, you can go back and pull the CSV files, compare the 10G, the 5.7, the 24, whatever, and relate them to the weather conditions. So the intention is to create a data resource for long-term study. Short-term, and particularly for the amateur in the shack type market, then this, I think, will have tremendous value, being able to look at A, what the beacon site, the monitoring site is hearing, but also if you can see your signal on there, that could be useful as well. I appreciate from here that might not be quite so useful, but certainly down in the southeastern part of the country would be very useful. Bear in mind we'll be using omnidirectional antennas. So what we'll see on here is likely to be about 20 dB lower than you would typically receive yourself on your own station with a dish antenna, directional antenna. So we have a penalty in what we'll hear there. But that's the long-term intention. Initially, we're going to start with a beacon monitoring on 3 centimetres. Thanks to Bernie's wonderful box, it is actually relatively easy, and he's going to tell you this afternoon how we're going to implement it in our system. And then we'll add other bands according to demand and interest. Now, from those of us in the group who are doing this, who are where our interests are, we're focused on the microwave areas. So we want to do 10G, and then we'll probably go 5.7, 3.4, whatever. But if somebody comes along and says desperately, I really want to do this band, and because it's receiving size, it doesn't even need to be an amateur band, it can be wherever you like.
It could be a contract from the military.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get this up, you never know, there could be a professional interest in this at some point, you never know. But if you've got a need, if you've got an interest, then come and talk to us, because we're happy to have other people put stuff in there that marries in with what we're trying to do. It may be HF. We were talking idly yesterday, and Sam said, yeah, first day we said, yeah, why not put 10 metres in and watch it grow through the sunspot cycle or something like that. There's all sorts of interesting things that could be done. And we want to capture, obviously, the weather data for correlation. We're also trying to get, and I'll make this clear, that statement clear a little later on, we're trying to get some green power solutions in, some solar cells and possibly a wind generator. A, because of power issues on the site, again I'll cover those in a little while, but also because it's an extra source of data. Capturing performance data from both solar cells and wind generators makes the overall data set that we can produce more useful in the educational environment, in school science lessons and things like that. So I really want to try and capture that in there as well. Okay, so what will it look like? In your shack, at your PC, anybody looked at the University of Twente site from Holland? Yeah? The waterfall displays, they can display almost all the whole of the HF spectrum, and you can go in and click on a piece and widen it out. Right. That's the sort of area that we want to be able to go into. We want to be able to show about 1 meg of spectrum in each of the microwave bands that we've got. Because in that 1 meg you can get the beacon segment and you can get the narrowband segment. They're all within a meg of each other. So if we can display that via your PC screen, you can then click on whichever bit is of interest. If you want to try and look for your signal, you go and click on the narrowband bit and widen it out into a better view. Or if you're more interested in the beacons, you click on that and just see what beacons can be seen at this particular time. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily hold if we come down to doing HF bands. Would probably be a different bandwidth we'd be looking for. But again, the intention would be to cover a beacon segment and wherever there's a centre of activity, so that you can look at both. And the idea then is you can select a smaller window from that to look down to more specific data. Actually, the data rates out of the system required to achieve that are not that high, provided it's the waterfall data you bring out, not the raw SDR data. SDR data is a horrific amount of stuff. But the whole thing is subject to getting reliable links and data rates out of the site at the moment. And this is part of the investigation that we've got to go through as yet. We know we can get the data out. It's a question of where to and what permissions we can get. I say, at the moment, the thoughts are that the CSV file will probably be 5 minutes, but we don't know. It's all down to investigation and decisions. Where we are at the moment is that we've got permission for the feasibility stage. So we're in a set of feasibility tests at the moment from the estate owners and their consultants who deal with all the various heritage and listed building and all the other committees that we're going to fall foul of. We have done an initial, probably a bit optimistic to say we've done a site characterisation. We've done some reception tests. I've got a gigabyte of files to go through and try and get some sense out of. So it's probably not quite true to say we've done the characterisation. We've got the reception tests done, because you now have the source that we use sitting on the mast at the back here. That was how G0GHK got on beacon spot, because it was on from Monday till Tuesday last week. There it is. You may recognise the hardware. This is the top of the block. You see, it's quite a good garden at the moment. It needs a bit of attention up there. Martin keeps threatening to come and do some gardening on the site. And while we were up there putting that up, I did go around and spray it with something nasty. Over in the background there, you can see a corner of the. That's actually the clock tower. This is the sort of teaching area of the school, and way behind that is the manor itself. So you can see we've got some tree coverage around. Nothing too obtrusive, but it does mean that performance is going to change from summer to winter as we get leaves on and off the trees. We're not going to have a totally consistent performance all the year round. That's about 2.5 metres to the top of that mast there. I doubt we're going to be able to get much higher than that from a point, if we're even allowed to go with that, from a point of view of people like listed buildings and English heritage, because this wasn't there at the time when the block was used. This is the team that went out along with me, who was behind the camera, to play with reception testing. As you can see on the tops of the cars, there's a Bernie box with an SDR IQ receiver underneath it. And this was a test we did before we set off, just to make sure that all three systems were getting the same sort of performance level from the site, and they were. Went through and checked them in the same bandwidth. We were getting the same signal levels from the site. We were about 4 kilometres away at that point. But you said you were a little bit disappointed at the signal level, weren't you? But this was off a pretty off a maximum, wasn't it? Because we arranged the antenna maximum east-west.
Two possibilities. One is there might be some local vegetation in the transmitter site, and the second one is that we're still not convinced it wasn't something slightly elevated on the radiation pattern from the beacon.
Possibly,
it got it to rain so well. Yeah,
it did rather, yeah. So we did this, and then 6th and the 7th of July, we hit various places and made some measurements. We also got some reports in from fixed stations around the area, G3ZEZ down in Clacton, Bernie over in Cambridge, and John G4BAO over in Cambridge. Russ G4PBP up in Wolverhampton gave us a report on rain scatter. John G4EAT down in Essex. Don't know of anybody else, but I think it was John who broke it into beacon spot. Anyway, it got put on as a beacon spot, and it's now.
Simon copied it again.
Oh, Simon
directly, only by rain.
Oh, he only heard by rain. Okay, yeah. Okay, so what we need to do now, so one of the next stages of testing, is to establish how we get our data link out, because a lot of this falls down if we can't get a link out. The issue, as I said, is not can we get a data path, because a radio path is easy from there. We have a clear line of sight view to the BT tower at Martlesham. We've got clear views to other places. It's more a case of getting the various permissions and connections that we need. The problem with the tower at Martlesham is there's no public internet there. Yeah. It's a wonderful site for getting the radio into, but you obviously need the onward link into the internet as well. We need to put up the initial 3 centimetre receive system and start to collect data on what we can hear. We've got an idea now how the site performs as a transmit site, but that's not really where we want to go. That was just an opportunity we had to look at before we started to do anything else. Once we've got receiver sites up there, we don't really want to put transmitters there for obvious reasons. So it was the only opportunity to do that. We hope during September into early October to get an initial 3 centimetre antenna and system up there. And again, that's very investigative, because until we get a system up there and look at what we can receive, the only thing we can be certain of is we'll hear the Martlesham beacon. Because it's a cracking signal there. Whether we can hear under flat conditions any of the other beacons around, remembering that we have about a 20 dB penalty over you with a home station with some form of dish, we don't know yet. So that's going to be quite interesting. We're going to be going with a slotted waveguide antenna. Bernie's going to tell you about it. So we need to find out whether that's going to be enough gain and things like that. But once we've got some of those questions answered, we can then put more detail on the sort of bones that I've been talking about. We know where we want to go, but we need some information yet on how we get somewhere near there. Okay, in terms of a time plan, we hope to at least have some initial results from this monitoring to show by the time of the Martlesham Roundtable in November. So that's what's driving our timescale at the moment, is trying to make sure we've got some real data that we can put up on the screen at the beginning of November. There are some limitations, obviously, on this. It's a voluntary project. We're all doing this because we like it, because we enjoy it, because it's interesting. It's a nice challenge. It's also voluntary funding. It's coming out of our pockets at the moment. Connectivity and power. I've covered the data issues, but there's also power issues on the site. And of course, we've got dear old bureaucracy to deal with. This is a heritage site. It's listed building status. So we've got the planning people, we've got English Heritage, we've got listed building commissions, and we've got everybody who is interested in that sort of thing. Some of them have powers to actually say, no, you can't do that. Others have powers to make a real fuss about it, although they can't actually stop it. So we've got to try and placate those as much as possible so we can move forward with that. Now, at the moment, we're sort of staving them off by saying, well, it's all investigative. There's nothing permanently planned there, and whatever we're doing, we're making no fixtures to the building. So that steel pallet, for example, is heavy enough that it's going to sit on the roof. Nothing's going to move that. It's not attached in any way. So at the moment, we're trying to play that card, but there's going to come a time when it's no longer investigative. And we've got to come clean and say, no, we want to actually do this, please. So what we have got is very good support from the estate owners. The current owners of the Bawdsey Manor estate are very supportive of the project. They are the people who own the school as well, and they're happy with the educational aspect of this. So getting in the education aspect is actually quite important to the survival of this. If it's up there as purely for amateurs, then it's not going to get the support. So long as there's an educational link into science and maths, and possibly other areas, then we can get that support and it will be wholehearted. The entire Bawdsey Manor site is listed. The public bit and the school bit is, so all this stuff about heritage, and there are a million people, it seems to me, who have views about what can, can't be done, how it must be done, and what they'll accept. So we've got to try and navigate through those. But again, because we have the estate owner's support, we also have the cooperation at their expense of their consultant who deals with all of this, which is working very well so far. So, as I say, I think this is going to be the most difficult side of the whole project. There are a considerable number of technical challenges, because although people we've got involved, Sam, Alan, Graham Murchie, Martin, Jason Flynn, have all got very specific skills, and we're dragging other people in with expertise where we know we need it. This is quite different to setting up a stationary shack at home. It's a different exercise. So we're all learning. But in spite of that, I still think it's going to be this that determines our timescales overall.
Can I just ask,
yeah.
Are there still ducts from the receiver building to the existing? So the previous
There's a warren of tunnels underneath the place. Yeah.
Is it possible to use the original antenna site?
Well, the problem is the original antenna site is, just for one antenna, it's 4 concrete pads. They're each about that width at the top and larger at the bottom. They stand way beyond the site. They're must be about 10 feet high, each pad, 8 to 10 feet high.
Very sound, yeah.
Oh, very sound. Distance apart from that wall to that wall in a square. I'm sure English Heritage, forget anybody else, I'm sure English Heritage would be absolutely delighted if we said, can we rebuild one of the original single towers? But I doubt they'd accept. Well, the problem is, I doubt they would accept anything that wasn't rebuilding of one of the towers or part of one of the towers. That's the point. English Heritage are a funny organisation in that they want it as it was, not a current implementation that's sympathetic to what it was. So the chances of getting that there are probably as remote as getting our pallet on the roof anyway. I'd actually love to see the bottom 30 or 40 feet of one of the original towers built and left there. But
David, what's the grade of this?
I don't actually know.
It does make a significant difference.
Yeah, but listing is more of a planning issue. Listing is more of a planning issue. It's the heritage people who are the real problem.
Also determines who you have to ask.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Bless it.
English Heritage are in there. There's no way out. They're all over that site, unfortunately. Yeah. There's an issue with power, as I mentioned earlier. The best way to describe it is that the wiring in the building is of mixed parentage. A substantial amount of the wiring is rubber with cotton covering.
TRS it was called.
And actually the rubber steel has been in pretty good condition. As long as you don't try and move. but also it's of an age when it was acceptable to carry the earth via the outer metal of the conduit, which is no longer within current regulations. It hasn't been for quite a while. There has been some PVC work done on the site, obviously before the current regulations, because if you touch anything under current wiring regs, we would have to rewire the whole building. And because of heritage, as you say, we'd have to do it in rubber. Probably wouldn't get away with PVC.
What if it's a grade 1?
Possibly, yeah, okay, yeah.
If it's grade 2, you get away with it.
I think it's probably, given its age, it's probably grade 2, but yeah, I don't know. So that's why the other reason why we're investigating the ability to put green and solar and wind power there. We can generate about 400 or 500 watts in each system, then we can generate enough power to keep the receiver station running and the PC and everything else that we need.
So
the problem,
permission for a mast for the wind power,
this is where we'd like to be, David. Yes. Again, it's likely to be heritage, particularly, who will, because the prospect of us putting some solar panels on the roof, which would be out of the sight line from anywhere on the ground, has already been vaguely floated with the local council planning people. We don't think you'll get away with that on a heritage point of view. Not because it could be seen, because we can make sure it isn't, but simply because Watson Watt didn't have solar panels there.
I think I could go if you did.
We couldn't see there was a... It's not. The problem with English heritage, it's not a visibility issue. With planning permission, it's visibility and objections. But with heritage, it's not.
Bloody-minded.
Yeah. So that's where, again, this is where we'd like to be, but whether we'll get there, we just don't know at the moment.
I think we might find that cropping quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I have heard that English heritage is becoming a little bit more tolerant.
Well, the reason is that you can't. What's happening is that old buildings are actually deteriorating.
Well, this is
obstruction.
This is the problem. If we're not in there, then there's no maintenance of the building whatsoever, and it further deteriorates. Because although the school has a responsibility, or the estate has a responsibility, if they're not getting any use out of it, it comes well down their priorities. So, yeah, I totally agree, David. So, it's potentially a large project over a long period of time. It's certainly generated a lot of interest so far. The team that we've got working on it I've sort of put together a core of about 5 people for specific skills, but we're dragging in people already with other expertise to offer in different areas. It's generated a lot of interest down where we are, and I've even had emails saying, "What's the Bawdsey project?" So word has sort of permeated out and people know nothing about it, but this is really the first occasion when we've had a chance to put it out to a wider audience. So I think it's something which hopefully could go on. As you said, we've got a lot of difficulties. Even the school, the estate management consultant is saying, well, actually, if we get a block on the receiver block because of heritage or anything like that, then maybe we could consider using the roof of the White Tower. Which actually would be quite nice, because Watson Watt did his work right underneath there. And although it would be nice to have the receiver block back in use, it's got synergy there, but also the synergy of sitting what we do right on top of where he was, and probably having equipment down in the area where he had his labs in that case, would also be a very nice synergy as well. The advantage from there would be things like the antennas and that would be even less visible than they're going to be on top of the receiver block roof. But we don't know yet. There's a long way to go down that way.
Did you say there's a problem with internet access?
It's a problem. The school has internet. The school has internet. I'm trying to keep what we do off that. A, because it's flaky anyway. We think we can do something better, probably. Yeah. But I don't want any risks of anything happening on the school system because of something we do.
Or if anything happens, it will be your fault.
Exactly, yeah, even if we're not there. Yeah. You're absolutely right, yeah. There's no reason why other measurements shouldn't be added from, I know Alan said, can I put a magnetometer there? Yeah, I'm all for gathering whatever data we can from the site, particularly for the educational aspect. So if anybody's got any ideas, or even kit then we'd love to talk to you. As I've stressed, I think a lot of times, I think it's the bureaucracy rather than anything technical that's going to determine our timescales. We're going to have technical challenges, we're going to have financial challenges, but I think it's the bureaucracy that will overall determine how we get to wherever we manage to go. And we're learning out of it. So we may not get things right the first time we try to do things, but hopefully we'll probably get it better the second time or the third time. We're also very happy to talk to anybody who's able to volunteer any expertise, equipment, advice, experience in this sort of facility. So it's an open project in that respect. But, we have some expertise. None of us would claim to be experts in this area of broadband monitoring. So we are going to learn a lot out of it. But anybody who has got anything to offer, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Richard.
Have you considered approaching for a lottery grant to rebuild one of the towers?
I suspect we might have difficulty from planning and also